This video is a brief introduction to the abstract syntax tree. When you execute code in PHP, and indeed in many other languages, there are a number of steps that takes the raw source code to convert it into an executable format. In PHP world, we start with our code, then it is tokenized using something called a tokenizer. Those tokens are then converted into something called an abstract syntax tree, an AST. The AST is then used to create opcodes, and in PHP world, the opcodes are run on a virtual machine. And what we're interested in for this video is the AST, the abstract syntax tree. Now, all code that we write can be represented in the abstract syntax tree. So imagine we had code like this, and we were going to break it into nodes that appear in the abstract syntax tree. We might, we would start off here with a class node, and the class node would have properties. For example, it would have a name property, which in itself is an identifier node. And in this case, it has three statements. There is one property statement and two class methods. So what we should start to see is that all code can be represented in the abstract syntax tree. The AST is made up of nodes, and depending on what is being represented, there's different kinds of nodes. So in here, we've got a class node, an identifier node, a property node, and some class method nodes. And each node has properties, and depending on what it's representing, it has different types of properties. So if we go in a bit further, if we looked at, for example, this notify player method, there is a node type of class method, which represents the fact we're creating a method, or the code represents a method. It too has a name property, in this case an identifier, and we can see that the identifier has its own name property, in this case notify player. So hopefully we're starting to see the connection between the nodes in the abstract syntax tree and the code that they represent. And we also have a class method also has a parameters node, and here there is a single parameter which has got an identifier which is type string. And in this case there is just one method, one statement, which is a method call. So the key takeaway is that all of our code can be represented in abstract syntax tree form. And there is this library, the PHP parser library, which has PHP representations, PHP classes for each type of node that appears in the abstract syntax tree. So really the key takeaway is PHP code can be represented by an abstract syntax tree. There are different types of node, and nodes contain information. And each type of node has different information. And the AST, or the concept of an AST, isn't specific to PHP. Many other languages do things similar to this. And why does this matter? Well, for tools like PHPStan and Rector, they take the AST representation of a code base and they do things with it. So for example, both PHPStan and Rector, what will happen is they'll iterate through the entire code base, and they'll say things like, oh, I've got a class node. Any rules, so PHPStan and Rector have a series of rules, and the rules act on nodes of different types. So for example, PHPStan will iterate through the entire code base and will say, for example, I've got a class node. Are there any rules that are interested in class nodes? And some of the rules will say, yeah, I'm interested in them. And then PHPStan will pass operation over to that particular rule, and the rule will do some processing and determine if there's been an issue to report or not. So now let's have a look at how we can view abstract syntax trees. There are a number of tools that can help us view our code in the abstract syntax tree form. This is an AST viewer which is provided by Rector. So it's just an online tool. You can type your code in here, you click parse, it shows you the code on this right-hand panel, and then at the bottom it shows you what the abstract syntax tree is for the code we put in here. So I've just put something really simple in here. This is just a function call. And what we can see down here is we've got a node called funcCall. And if we were to go and look at that in the PHP parser library, so we can see the funcCall is PHP parser node expression funcCall. So if we were to go to the PHP parser, we can see we've got this function called here, which is in PHP parser node expression. So we can kind of see, hopefully, how the code in the AST viewer maps to the code in the PHP parser library. And what's interesting, so this is the function call. So this is the class that represents a function call in PHP parser library. And generally, the interesting thing about all of the class representations of nodes in the abstract syntax tree, the bits we're normally interested in are just the properties at the top. So we can see function call has two properties. It's got a name property and it's got an args property. And if we go back to the visualization of it, we can see there is a name property here, and we can see it's of type fully qualified name, and it has a value say hello, which kind of comes back to the name of the function that we're calling. It also has an args property, and here we've got a single arg, and we are passing something which is a scalar string, and that has a value of Dave, which we can kind of see here. So taking a step back, all our PHP code can be represented in an abstract syntax tree form. There is a library called the PHP parser library, which provides PHP representation of all of the types of nodes that appear in the abstract syntax tree. And we're going to see in later videos how we can use this to help us either write PHPStan rules or our own custom PHPStan rules, and also our custom vectors. So have a play with the AST visualizer, put some code in, have a go, and then see how that relates to the classes in the PHP parser library. Give that a go and join me in a later video where we see how we can take this and use it for creating our own custom PHPStan rules and vector rules.